All right, here we are live from LaGuardia Airport. The customer success show getting kicked off today. We got a hiring manager AMA today, and we're going to go ahead and bring on our panel. We have Thomas, AJ, and Miles with us today. All amazing people, all my best friends, close associates. No, okay, that's maybe not all true, but happy to have them here. Real quick, if you today's AMA, you are able to comment on the stream. If you want to leave a comment with your question to ask our hiring managers, we will just bring you up and we'll bring up your question and then we'll talk about it. So happy to do that. So real quick, Success Panda is rolling out some new features. If you haven't checked it out, successpanda.io. Check it out when you have some time. We're rolling out actually hiring managers, networking, and technologies. I was just at a customer success meetup in New York and had a lot of really, really good things that are going on with technologies, which is a bunch of people. If you sell into SaaS, we want to list you on the marketplace. So check that out. So without further ado, let's do some intros. Oh, what up, Christina? All right. So on my screen, I got Thomas up here. So we'll start with him. We'll then AJ, then Miles. We'll go in that order of intros, and then we'll jump into questions.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, Brad. I'm Thomas Bass, Director of Customer Success at StudentBridge. We help colleges recruit students to get there. So we're a MarTech company. I've been in CSM SaaS for over a decade, and I grew the team at SaaS Optics and Maxio from just me all the way up to 16 people across the globe. So I've had a lot of interviews from everywhere else. So fun fact, I am a McLaren fan. This season has turned out very well for me so far. So if you're a Red Bull fan, I don't want to hear it. Thanks.
Nice. That's cool.
Wonderful. I think it's my turn then next to go, Brad.
It is. Yep. That was part of the original instructions.
Well, I wanted to make sure, you I like to make sure we keep it moving. Hey, everyone. My name is AJ. AJ Jaden, Director of Customer Success. I do a lot of consulting on companies on their implementation and support and customer success. Been involved now for 9-10 years, growing teams, both domestic and international, anywhere from SaaS to hardware devices, and AI is kind of where I'm specializing now. Fun fact is I actually grew up in Asia for 13 years and was born in South Korea. Don't let the blonde hair, blue eyes fool you. And then also, if you guys have seen Brad out and about with Success Panda, you'll probably have seen me out there because I like to say that I work with Brad, but I work more for him than with him, which is amazing. So you get to learn a lot from Brad.
As it should be. No, I'm joking. What's funny is when yesterday I had several people, they said, "Where's AJ?" And I said, weren't able to get a free ticket for him, unfortunately. Only one free ticket, but the people were asking about you.
Cool. Miss them.
All right. Thanks, AJ. Go ahead, Miles.
Yeah, excited to be here. My name's Miles, obviously. I have spent the first 10 years of my career working for large at-scale organizations, and the second 10 years of my career working for startups, both in e-commerce tech as well as SaaS. And so, yeah, I think interesting things about me. I am a part of just about every weird conspiracy Facebook group on the planet, whether it's shape-shifting reptilians, flat earthers, like you pick the niche, and I am a part of that Facebook group because it is quality entertainment. So if any of us are Facebook friends and you see me in one of those groups, you do it ironically.
Nice.
I feel like it starts off ironic and then sometimes morphs into reality, but okay.
There is a risk.
So Thomas, tell us about Flat Earth. No, okay, I'm joking. But yeah, no, I mean, that's cool. I didn't know that. Learn something every day. That's cool. Yeah, so by the way, when I was if you're watching this in chat right now, or if you're watching it later on YouTube, these are recorded. We post them on our YouTube channel. I'm a YouTube noob, so right now it's under playlist. I need to like Google how to have them show up on your home page YouTube, so that like when you go to the channel, it shows like there's actual content there, which it's there. It's just under the playlist. So I'll get around to fixing that. But reach out to me if I have a connection who's looking to hire a couple CSMs with a finance background. Good OTE, remote only, 120 and 150. You got a finance background, reach out and ping me. I'll make an intro. Alrighty. So let's jump into first question. All right. So the people want to know, and I met a couple people yesterday. Everyone was asking this question: how would you assess this job market, and what are you seeing? So Thomas, we'll start with you. Give us a minute or two, then AJ, then Miles, and then just whoever on follow up.
The market is tough. Like there's no way around it. The market is tough. I mean, when I posted a job earlier this year, I had over 200 applicants in the first week. Somebody else in my network just posted a job for just a normal CSM role. She had 1,000 applications in a week, and like at that point, like that amount of volume is tough. So if you're just blind applying, you're in a tough spot. I mean, with that amount of people looking for work and applying, you really have to set yourself apart. So I think that it's definitely hard, but I do think that there are opportunities. And I think that, however much I hate to say this, it's really going back to a little bit of like who you know. Like if you can get a warm intro, if you can have somebody there, like a second or third degree connection, at least if you can get that initial screen, then it's on you. But it's really tough to even get that initial screen from what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Thomas. It's almost like to even get in the door, you have to have picked up the CEO's son from daycare and then also cooked him a 5-course meal, and then maybe you might get a talking to. I think you hit it right on the nail. The job market, it's tough when people say like, oh, it's great. I'm like, no, a lot of people, and I've kind of gone through this recently where I'm doing a lot of consulting with companies, and they ask like, how many interviews should we have? Who should we hire? Like, we have all these great people. And, to be fair, a lot of companies don't know what they're doing right now with hiring, making people jump through hoops of do this assessment. We want you to do 7 rounds of interviews, and then we'll get back to you in 2-3 months. I think we really need to take a step back as a society and say, like, let's actually get back to where we were. And because these are actual people, treat people like you want to be treated. So I feel for a lot of people out there, the best thing I can tell people is be positive. That is by far be kind to yourself. Like everyone's going through it. And, if you're looking for a job and someone reaches out, like you were saying, Thomas, like help them in any way you can, because it might help you later down the road.
Yeah, I think what I would add is we kind of have seen 2 phases to the job market in the last 5 or so years. And the first phase was all of us were receiving a ton of recruiting outreach for job openings, right? Recruiters are in your inbox, they're chasing you. You have leverage to negotiate higher wages with your current employer or find a better, higher paying job. And that has gone away. And, the term that I've heard thrown around is the great stay, right? So for the next 3 to 5 years, most people are going to be staying at their current employer because the risk of leaving is too great. And so what that does to anyone who's looking for a job is there's just less seats on the bus at these companies because people aren't leaving. There's less mobility and motion. And so as a result, as a candidate, that thing makes things a little more tricky because you're now competing, like Thomas said, with 400 to 500 applicants. And you're hoping that the AI they use to scan your resume works, or that it optimizes or maximizes for the way that you've formatted your resume. I think personally, just as I've looked through hundreds of resumes over the last year or so, I always make sure to review every resume of people that have reached out to me personally, even if I don't know them. And so I would say the chances of at least having your resume looked at or securing a phone screening increase if you can make personal connections, even if it's through hiring managers. I think the other thing is, and if I go too long, Brad, cut me off. I think the reality is VC funding is not there where it was before with SaaS, and they've kind of shifted away from investing in companies with a lot of ARR, and they've shifted their focus to investing in companies with a lot of velocity. So you may not have a ton of ARR, but if you're growing at 200%, 300%, suddenly VCs are interested in capitalizing those companies over some of these other companies. And so, like, if you look at the job market, where those jobs might be coming from for you are early stage startups that have a good amount of velocity, but maybe not a lot of ARR. And so for those trying to get back into the job market who maybe are unemployed, you might have to take a role at a company where you're employee number 5 or 10 or 15 rather than employee number 80 or 100.
Yeah, I think it also goes to the rule of 40, right? Like, so you can be high growth or you can be really cost conscious and like grow with expenses. And so I think that that's the other kind of flip side as well. So if you're like free cash flow positive, generally you can get a little bit more play than just like growing at the 80, 90% of the wild of 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
And
So
Miles, hold on, Brad, because I want to go back to Miles on this. I'm not hijacking your event, I promise. But to
please do.
Miles' point,
It would be better.
no, it never could. You have the panda hat, I don't. The crazy thing, Miles, is the last 3. There's the head. I love it. Perfect. Wonder how you got that through TSA. But Miles, the last 4 startups I was at, I was the first 5 employees, and it's a lot of hard work. But I think that's where a lot of people are thinking, hey, we need someone to come in and make a difference. And it's all right to be, it doesn't matter what number, but I do see a lot more jobs out there for smaller businesses. Whereas like my wife who works for IBM, she's like, oh, you should go talk to this recruiter. I'm like, yeah, there's no jobs right now, in the big company. So everyone's kind of I think also everyone's waiting until November to see what happens. And they're all a little nervous and on edge. So I think it's going to pick up later this year, if not early next year. But I think everyone's just holding out, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I like what Miles said about, if someone's making a personal outreach, he does the respectful thing and tries to at least read the resume and, do that portion. I would say, especially after being at the event yesterday. So I was at the Customer Success Week in New York, and I was talking to a lot of people. There's a lot of hiring managers, met CEOs, other founders, people that are hiring, right? People that are hiring managers. There are jobs, but they're all in a network. So it really is about who kind of right? And I won't say who I know a person. I won't say who it is. They were looking for a job, I think, for about 8 months. And it wasn't until they went to like an in-person meetup and they were just overtly like more, on the name tag, hey, Brad, hire me, like they were being very explicit about wanting to get hired. And that person ended up finding the right connection at that time and led to a job offer 2 weeks later. Right. And so I think everyone kind of knows this, but I think this is one of the points that I'm trying with Success Panda. And I have coaching clients where instead of they're unemployed right now, they actually are employed because I told them, hey, it's easier to keep a job than to find a new one. So let's just every quarter have a 1-hour session. And not only that, you have a learning development budget. They're not even paying for it. Their company is. And so we just meet quarterly and we just go over what's going on. and it seems like it's super grateful because it's just right now it is tough. There are jobs available. Like I said earlier, if you have a finance background, I know someone that's hiring 2 CSMs, that are remote. That's in my network. If you know me, you can reach out. But there's a lot of that. Most of the leaders that I know, they're like, yeah, we do have like 1 or 2 positions because they know of people either leaving, accepting new positions, but they just don't post in the job.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add is if you're going to do the personal outreach, because when I posted the job a couple months ago, I had a ton of people in my inbox, which is great. But hey, T-Bass, I applied for the job, looking forward to chatting. Like, that's not going to really set you apart, especially if I have 20, 30, 40 people doing the same thing. So, like, if you're going to do that outreach, at least from my perspective, set yourself up to make it easy for me. Hey, T-Bass, just apply for the role. Here's 3 quick bullet points of why I think I'm a good candidate. So that way I don't even have to, like, if you give me that, I don't have to read through the entire resume. I can be like, you hit on the 3 things I care about. Great. Let's book a call. Right. It's like, take that extra little 30 seconds and really try to like understand why you would be that good candidate and help me make it easier for me. Right. Because that's the goal. If you make my life easier, all of a sudden you get much more further in the process.
Can I maybe let the genie out of the bottle a little bit? This might be a dangerous thing. I don't.
Hold on, Miles. Before you do, can I start calling you T-Bass, please?
Absolutely.
Okay, that is just a sweet nickname. Like, while you're saying, I'm like, I bet he has some sweet nicknames he just doesn't want to share. But another day. Go ahead, Miles.
But it's fine.
Yeah, so I don't know if anyone has heard or used of Apollo.io before.
Yeah.
It's an incredible tool that allows you to go to LinkedIn and find people's personal contact information, even if it's not necessarily listed. And it will also help you sift through an organization to find out who the hiring manager is for that role, even if they're not necessarily listed. It's just listed through a recruiter. So that's more of like a tactical thing people can do to try to get their resume, their name, their email in front of the actual hiring manager. So it's Apollo.io, and this is an unpaid advertisement.
There you go. Although we wish it was paid, sadly. All right, let's go next question here. That was great. So, which, by the way, that came in. I bring this back up. Meredith agrees with you. AJ, the co-founder of Freeze Company I worked at, said the same thing. He expects more hiring post-election. So, thanks, Meredith.
It's close. We're what? How many days? Almost less than 31 days. So we'll see what happens.
It's also like the interest rates coming down should help, right? Because a lot of these earlier stage companies, they have venture debt, which is a floating rate. So when you were used to paying 1%, then it goes up to 7% in the span of a year. Like, that's a ton of additional expenses that wasn't in the plan.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. So we got this question, which are, what are your opinions about resumes, type, styles, format resonate with you as a hiring manager? Are you a 1-pager type guy, or you do allow up to 3 pages? What I mean, tell us, what do you think about resumes? We'll start with Thomas and then go AJ and Miles.
T-Bass. It's T-Bass, not Thomas.
T-Bass. Yes, that's right.
Like, I'm never the first Thomas in the organization, so I never get the opportunity to have my first name. So it's just been T-Bass as long as I can remember.
Well, you know,
like I'm bitter.
You know what's funny, T-Bass, is that when it's like always the corporate handle of your email. So mine was B-Dave, like.
LaGuardia Wi-Fi.
You gotta love it. He should have flown out of JFK or Newark, right? At least.
Maybe we just
somewhere with a better lounge, right?
Oh, it's. I think I can take over. Oh no, he's back.
Oh,
okay.
He's back. Here we go.
Oh, I'm back. I think I said a naughty word and like the Wi-Fi security or something. I don't know. It all went blank. It went down. Which, AJ, if it goes down again, you run out the show.
Just perfect.
Click end stream. Anyways, yeah. So what do we think? What do we think about resumes? What resonates with you?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of like the personal statement at the top, like I'm driven by customer success. It's like you should be driven by CS if you're applying for a CSM role. So like I don't really care about the personal statement like that's on the top of the resumes, but one pages, 2 pages, that's fine. I mean, you're writing me a small novel. I probably am not going to make it all the way through, right? Like, is your experience from 15 years ago really directly applicable? Maybe, maybe not. Or how can we shorten it up to like really only leave in the key experience points for the job that you're applying to today versus what you had maybe a while ago? But yeah, right. Like I'm looking for, especially because CS is very highly revenue focused, right? Like it's not just make people happy. It's like you better retain people, you better juice the NRR, you better find CSSQLs, the whole 9 yards there. So like, tell me that you've done that. Tell me you've been successful. Like highlight, I took over a book of business and took it from 80% GRR to 87% GRR over 12 months. Or I got our NRR from 92% to 110 over the course of my CS career at insert company, right? Like give me those hard numbers because that makes it easier for me to sell my team and my executive team on this person's not going to be just an expense, but they might actually be a help us with revenue and like generating additional ARR and NRRs.
I agree 100%, T-Bass, with the metrics. That's the first thing I look for. When people say I need to redefine my resume, I'm like, why? Well, it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't, hit A, B, and C. Here's what I learned in college years ago. You can go to 10 different people and 10 different people and ask them about your resume and you'll get 10 different answers. You have to do with what you think is working and sometimes change it up. I'm not saying change it for every job, but if you're applying for like an enterprise level, or you're applying for a director, they're going to look for specific metrics in that job. And if you go to someone like on Upwork or someone online and say, oh, can you make me a resume? They're just plugging and playing with your words to put it into a resume that they've made for 100 other people. I am my most recent role, I was helping them hire for an enterprise role, and we had about 200 applications. About 20 of them all looked the exact same. And I'm like, I know where they came from. So people are like, oh, I want to put a picture of myself on there. I'm like, you don't need to, but the most important things, in my opinion, for a resume is one, your contact information, two, the numbers, and then three, how long you've been there. Like you don't need to put March of 2023 to February 2024. Like put the year and let the resume speak for itself.
Yeah, really good points. And so let me maybe add some things that weren't discussed because I agree with everything that's been said. I think as I'm scanning resume, well, let me actually back up. For a resume to get to me, it's already passed through one or two filters, right? It's passed through the application software and it's passed through a recruiter. And so I would even advise on your resumes, have 3 or 4 iterations of the same resume formatted differently, and A/B test them. Some resumes are going to hit on the things that application softwares are looking for and others aren't. And so submit 2 or 3 to the same job, even if it'll let you, and A/B test with various applications at various companies that you're applying to see which iteration of your resume is resonating with the filters that exist between you and the hiring manager. I think there's a lot of like gobbledygook on resumes. People that say I have experience or expertise in Excel or Microsoft Office or whatever. And to me, those are just table stakes stuff, right? Like that just is noise that I'm not looking for. And so I want to get a sense for who are you as a person? What have you accomplished in your career, preferably metric driven or led, like was mentioned by Thomas and AJ. And then I actually care quite a bit about who your referrals are, who your reference checks are. Are these people who are respected? Are these people who managed you that have solid careers in their own right? Because I'm going to do back channel references checks on you. And am I going to be talking to senior directors and COOs, CEOs that have good things to say about you? or am I going to be talking to peers who are also CSMs? And so those are things that I would think about, and that obviously becomes incumbent on you to create good relationships, and have people who, for lack of a better word, are in high places that think highly of you. And so those would be the points that I would add to the feedback already given.
Yeah, no, I would just add that having seen a lot of resumes, I think that the one thing that you just want to make sure that if you know it's going in front of a human being, like for example, I think ideally it's best you have a resume that works both ATS and it's readable. But I tend to stress having a resume that is inviting to read. Make readability where it's going in front of a human being. Use of white space. It's not 9-point font. All these things. So, because there's been some resumes where when I opened it up and I looked at it, I was like, this is all over the place. I can't, like, it made my pulse jump. It's just like, it was intense and it was like tons of color and tons of design. Don't let, the whole point of a resume is to get an interview, right? You don't need to be a design expert in your resume to show that you're able to articulate what you're trying to do. So,
can I add one thing?
Oh, go ahead.
Anything you put on your resume, you have to be prepared to be able to articulate what's on there. One of the most basic filtering questions I'll ask is, if I do interview somebody who has put that they're an expert in Excel on their resume, I'll ask them, what's your favorite formula? And if they come back with some or some if, then I immediately question their qualifications. And so, if you start putting, I'm an expert at this or I'm an expert at that, you need to be prepared to answer questions relating to that. So don't put anything that you're not willing to have explored.
Yeah. And the only thing I would say is, if you're from, let's say potentially lesser known company, but you're staying in a similar industry, help me out and tell me that you're from a similar industry and have a similar background, right? So when I was at Maxio, if you had NetSuite or Intact or Oracle on your resume, boom, immediately I'm talking to you. But if you're from a smaller organization of 10 people and you're doing something similar, I just haven't heard of you, make it easier to say, hey, guess what? I know what your software does already. I can speak to it a little bit. That can also really, really help you.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's all great stuff. Let's we got a question from Meredith. She asks, when do you want references? Miles, what do you think?
I'll go first. I would love to see 2 or 3 references on your resume personally, and it's their name, their title, or at least, the most recent title of theirs, and their contact information. Nothing is going to sell you better than the people that you know and the network that you have, right? And that's not to say that every single resume I look at, I'm going to go look up their references. But if I have 10 resumes that I think are my top 10 candidates, the first thing I'm going to do is go to their LinkedIn. And I'm going to look at who's given them referrals. Have they given anyone referrals? Do they reciprocate this sense of creating a community and helping other people? And I am honestly very interested in the titles of the people that serve as your references, because it gives me some sort of bearing in terms of what kind of impact you had at a company, or how well you performed or helped the culture, or whatever the case may be. So me personally, I love to have references on the resume. And then step 2 is I immediately go to your LinkedIn and I start looking at your network.
I'm the exact opposite, where I would much rather have references at the end, just because when I'm looking to hire someone, I want to, and this is just my philosophy, I like to wait till almost the end, but I always ask for references right before the last interview with them, because that's, if you're going to hire them or not. And that reference is a formality, but to your point, Miles, it does help to say, Brian, who's the director or the VP of my previous company, he would be a great reference. Wonderful. Who else? I also look at references from my team. So, one question I always ask during interviews is what would be something that your team would say about you? But again, I'm looking at more of the directors or VPs that I've helped with. And also, we said what 1 or 2 pages for a resume. I know my resume, I can't fit references on it, but I do know people that say it's under what's the wording, available upon request. Now I do have a list of probably 10 different references. I don't think you should only have 3. You should be able to go over to anyone and say, hey, like, I know Brad is a great reference for me and he's a part of that list. So depending on that role that I'm applying for, everyone would say great things about me, but who's going to help me along that way? So you should have a backup list of, hey, do you have 5 more people that we could contact, that we can reach out to? So I think at the end, but again, like I said before, you could ask 10 different people and you have 3, 4 great people here, and we're all going to tell you something different, but we're all, very similar in my opinion of what we would expect from resumes. Just we like to tweak things differently.
Yeah. And for me, I'm definitely not going to check resumes before our first call. So we get through the first call. If I like you, then great. I might think about it. But likely what's going to happen is first call with me. If you make it second round, I'm going to go to your LinkedIn, see if I'm connected with somebody that I'm like somewhat close with in my network that you might also be connected with. And I'm probably going to back channel it. Honestly, like if I really liked it, I want to say like, hey, did you work with this person? Like just give me the quick 30-second rundown. And then you get finally to all the way to the end. That's when I'll probably do that reference check. But I'm definitely leaning on my internal network first. Because right, like you self-select references. If I call you and you have a bad reference, like what the hell, right? So, but if I know somebody who I've worked with previously and you're also connected to them, I'm going to ask them like, hey, how was this person? They're probably going to give me the real rundown. So I'm going to give that a little bit more weight than self-selected references. But I think another thing for references, and it's very easy for CSM to say like, oh, here's another CSM and here's a CS manager. Like you don't have to just stay in the CS vertical. Like you're going to have to work with support. You're going to have to work with dev and product. You're going to have to work with sales and BDRs, right? Like, so you don't have to only stay in that vertical. So let me know that you can work cross-departmentally very well. Like I put some weight in that as well, especially in startup land.
Yeah, so I generally don't encourage people to put references on resumes and don't even include references upon requests or anything like that. Because 1, most people don't have the room. But then 2, if they're going to ask references anyways, they're going to ask and they're going to do back channel. And almost no one's going to put a reference on a resume that they already wouldn't know ahead of time that would give them a positive reference, right? So a lot of people, and this is why these are so helpful, or not, I guess, challenging, like Meredith said, this is why it's so difficult from an applicant's perspective. But this is why we have these calls, because we all kind of have different opinions about emphasizing certain things on a resume. But I would just say that now I've had the question before, are LinkedIn recommendations the same as, resume, what you would give for a resume referral? And I would say they're probably even better because they're putting their name on the line publicly and putting that on LinkedIn. So I always tell people, instead of like putting this on a resume, because that's prime real estate, to just make sure you have, go to that person because it puts their name, their face to it publicly, and make sure that you have some amount of LinkedIn recommendations, preferably of people like your boss or people that you manage, right? And just a further insight real quick is I do know, especially because we live in this very HR heavy litigious culture in the US, there are just founders. There's like a certain height of like a certain hierarchy of people who don't give a whole lot of context when you call them, right? And you're trying to get a reference, right, where they just say what the basic legal minimum is, and that's not exactly super helpful. Like I know a lot of founders where they just, whether they give, I guess pro or against, they try not to say a whole lot because certain things can come up. But I think it's a good question. And I think that it really just depends from person to person, because some people are going to look at LinkedIn recommendations and then derive that. Whereas some people might want more of like, the formal, hey, give me 3 to 5 references, and I'm going to call them. So,
what will
just
hurt? Get a
depends.
customer give you a reference on LinkedIn. Like how good of an example is that, right?
Yep. So it's interesting because that we actually haven't talked about that specifically in the AMA before. So I'm glad we got that. So let's move on to the next question, which people want to know is, how do you form strong relationships, right? So people are always talking about building relationships, but I can tell you that I went to a live in-person meetup yesterday, and it seemed like some people were doing a pretty good job of that, and then some people, it's a challenge. So how do we do that? How does someone build a strong relationship with T-Bass or AJ or Miles? Like, what does that look like from your perspective?
From my perspective, right, it's authenticity, right? Like, I'm not looking for fake happiness. I'm not looking for you to know the names of my dogs or anything like that necessarily, but taking legitimate interest, especially if you're interviewing in how the business is doing, how I view the growth of our department, right? Like it doesn't always have to be speaking about the company either, right? Like, hey, I see that car behind you. Are you a racing fan? Like, right, like little things like that, where it's like you're depositing some sort of relationship currency, right? So just be real, be authentic, right? Like, people love to talk about themselves. Give them that opportunity, and that's generally how you're going to start making that connection. Just keep asking people about themselves. Like, it's pretty easy.
Yeah. To piggyback off that, Seabass, my grandmother, she told me at a young age, you have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use that ratio when you talk to people. I think a great example is Brad and I met now. We met in December of last year, and we have a weekly call where we're just checking in on each other because we're genuine. We're listening to each other, but it's because we want to, not because we're trying to get something out of it. I think a lot of people confuse that of saying, well, I want to reach out to Miles because I want to get a job. Where what I would do is I would just reach out. Hey, Miles, saw that you were on Success Panda, really interested, would love to know more about your thoughts on references on resumes. Make it genuine, make it that you actually know what you're talking about. But at the end of the day, it's pretty easy, in my opinion, to build relationships. The tough part is maintaining them, because you can continue to, network and talk to everyone. But what Brad does so well is he continues to talk to everyone, and people know him because he remembers their name. He knows where they met, but he still builds that community where if he wants to reach out to someone, it's very simple. Just literally send a LinkedIn message, send a text, send, an email to someone. Hey, would love to catch up, grab coffee, or, see where things are right now. I think a lot of people don't do it because they're too afraid of, I don't want to bother them. What if they say no? It's kind of like asking someone, your high school crush out on a date. What's the worst they can say? No? Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we could probably spend like an hour or more on this topic because there's a lot that goes into it. I can teach most customer success skills. What I can't teach is how to care about other people in a genuine, non-self-serving way. That's something that you cultivate in your own character or personality over time. And so I am not a networker. I'm not naturally good at it. I was at CS 100 a couple weeks ago with client success, and I talked to maybe 5 people during coffee breaks, just because it's not who I am. I'm not an extrovert. I'm not the life of the party. But what I am is I care deeply about other people, and I want to help them. And I think most people genuinely want to help other people. And so when you ask for mentorship or you ask for insight, and it comes from a place of genuineness where it doesn't feel self-serving or it doesn't feel manipulative is probably the wrong word, but just like a one-way street, I think most people are willing to provide expertise and give help. Now, how do you convert that to a strong, long-lasting relationship? I think it's trying to reciprocate that in whatever way that we can. One of my closest mentors, he's a CEO of a fintech company, and he has helped me 100 times more than I've helped him. But I make sure that anytime I see an opportunity to help him, I try to reciprocate in small ways so that he knows this relationship doesn't exist solely because I need him and I need something from him, but because I care for him as a person. And I think the hard part about this is that relationships take time. And so you can't just go out and suddenly build a bunch of relationships that will help you get a job or help you do whatever. And so it has to come from a place of sincerity and genuineness, cultivated over time, and mutually beneficial. And I think if you can kind of nail those three things, you start to form a really strong network of genuine relationships. One tactical thing that a mentor gave me, knowing that I'm not good at networking, is he gave me an assignment. He's like, Miles, you need to be going to lunch at least once a month with someone in your network that you haven't connected with recently. And it's a commitment, like to leave work for an hour and a half to go grab lunch. Like it can be complicated trying to get schedules to align and step away and do that. But that has allowed me to maintain relationships that are really important to me, or even foster some new ones.
One thing
Yeah,
I want to add really quickly, which I think a lot of people don't do enough, and Miles kind of hit on it, is thanking mentors or thanking people. Send people a quick thank you text. Send them a thank you email. I mean, we all know, to let people know after an interview, send that thank you email, but do that when if someone hopes you get a job, thank them. They're going to remember that you thanked them, even if they didn't play as much as a role. And I think that's another way to build the relationships, that people are like, you know what, Brad's such a great guy. He just would send me random text messages to check in on me. And he thanked me for a lot of different things. And people don't do that. It's nice to get a thank you note, whether it's a text or an email or even a handwritten letter.
Being human doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, and if the only time you're reaching out to them is when you need something, people's BS meter goes up pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's what I always like when I coach people, or I'm just talking to job seekers. Anytime this whole networking thing comes up, it's just you think of it about like insurance. It's insurance fraud. If your house is on fire, you go and you buy your insurance, and then you lie about like, oh yeah, I don't need this insurance right now. My house isn't on fire, right? But it is on fire. And I think that's why so many times it's funny, because customer success is supposed to be proactive or even predictive at best, right? But yet we don't operate that. Most people don't operate that way in their personal lives. They don't network until they're forced to, as opposed to like any other thing that we're supposed to do for small incremental amounts of time, like brushing your teeth. And I call networking just being your professional hygiene. Just meet with your, 5 to 10 minutes a week. If you just go and just be grateful. And the number one thing that I tell, it's easy to network with people. It's just called being interested in other people. Being interested in other people is the number one strategy that you can use. Even if you're like the most boring person in the world, or you don't have anything to say or whatever, just being interested in other people and then showing gratitude is just the 1 or 2 step. And it's like anything, right? I mean, I saw someone at the airport today. They had a cool shirt on. It said, "It's not a dad bod, it's a father figure." And so I was like, "Oh, I need to find that shirt." But I was just thinking about exercise. It's like I always make self-deprecating jokes. Like yesterday when we were at dinner, and they're asking me like, "Oh, what should I get for dinner?" I'm like, "Look, with a physique like this, do you think I'm someone who discriminates against food? No. And then people sometimes when I first meet them don't realize how my personality. But anyways, yeah, it's just be yourself, and you don't want to ask for anything when you first need it. So if you have a runway, which is why I always tell people the best time to find your next job is when you're currently employed, right? If you have a current job, then you can go slow because the old, what is that? I'm blanking on his name. I'll think of it here in a second. Stephen Covey quote, with people, fast is slow and slow is fast. Find a way to go slow with people. You're not just trying to reach out to someone's inbox. Hey, T-Bass, I'm applying for this job. Oh, your beard is so amazing. I wish I could have a beard just as amazing as that. It doesn't work, But me and T-Bass haven't been on the show, and we'll interact some more. So we have FaceTime. We'll have talked to each other before. So if I reach out to him and be like, hey, I saw that you're connected with this person, then he's way more likely to help me out than not. So go slow with people, be interested in them, and learn to do your professional hygiene and network for some amount of time every week, whether it's even 5 or 10 minutes. Anything to add?
I would only add, you said something that I really like, be interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just as importantly, be less interested in yourself. Let go of some of the self-serving aspects of relationship building. And I think people will see the genuineness that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
I think moments when my career has advanced the most is when I have been focusing on helping other people's careers. And so I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, it's interesting because we had I can't remember her name, but she is part of a venture capital firm. She meets with huge companies like Facebook, and they were talking about profiles of people that are good first-time founders. And one of the things on the slide was they said that they have a transformational moment, right? And a lot of times these different moments happen because of that they're really interested in solving a problem or helping someone. So they take on some huge part of their job that's not traditionally part of their job. So if you're in CS, you take on this huge project between you and sales, or you and product. And I think being able to step outside your comfort zone is hard, but doing hard things is kind of what we're looking for in all candidates, right? Is, hey, can this person do hard things? Because working at this company is full of that. We got some comments here. So Meredith says, first thing my former team would say is how much I care about them. How do I quantify compassion on a resume? That's interesting. Mel says, Miles, he gets a lot out of mentoring you and seeing you thrive. It feels which there's no amount of money can buy that feeling. Hey Mel, glad you're here. And then she said, good old Dale Carnegie. Did I quote Dale Carnegie? I don't know if I did. So yeah, I mean, quantifying compassion on a resume would be hard to do. So let's end up with let's round out with one last question here, and we'll kind of go quick fire round. I'm always interested in, there's a lot of things that we could focus on, which kind of are good practices, right? So as I think about it, there's things to run towards, and then there's also things to run away from, right? So in the context of a job search, or in the context of interviewing technique or conducting interviews, what is, maybe if you want to share, obviously anonymize the information, but what's the worst interview you ever had to sit through when you were interviewing someone? And then why was it bad?
Yeah, I had a couple of those this last go around, unfortunately. So what made it not as great? So one of my key tests when I'm interviewing, especially in first and second round, is I like to think I'm relatively easy to talk to. If you can't hold a conversation with me, probably not a good thing, right? Like CSMs are about building relationships, and if you can't even hold a conversation with me for 10 minutes, I'm probably not going to move you forward. But this one candidate, not good at holding conversation, did not prep at all. They took the call via FaceTime from their phone while they were driving, which is generally not seen as a great move, I would think. Or just, like, make your bed if you're going to have your bed in your background. Like, have a light. If you interview like this, it's going to be a little bit weird, right? So, like, just put those things, because, like, again, if it's candidate A versus candidate B and y'all are exactly the same, I'm going to lead towards the person who was able to have a conversation more, or who had looked more put together, because then I'm less afraid to put you in front of my largest client, or send you to a conference, or send you to a client on site, because I know you prepared for it.
I had one. This was a very interesting interview experience. First question he asked me, he said, "Remind me what role I applied for." And I kind of turned to him and said, "Do you even know what company this is?" Like, to be honest, no. I said, "Okay, I think this is," and we just ended it there. It was all of 90 seconds. And I was like, what the heck? I also had another gentleman who, the typical like suit, shirt, tie, and then shorts underneath. And he joined the call, but
Wait, how'd you know the shorts? How'd you know the shorts?
Because he joined the call, but he had gotten up and he didn't realize that I accepted him into the meeting. So he went to go close the door. And it was kind of funny, but also I'm like, at least be prepared. Like, get ready to be on the call if you click join call.
I'm gonna like somewhat answer this, but I don't know if sharing like my worst experience will help others more so than just kind of sharing the things that tend to rub me wrong.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Good job, Miles. The things that rub you wrong.
Yeah, I would say, first off, what I want to know about you, I'm trying to answer 3 questions. Do you hold the door for other people? Do you put your shopping cart back when no one's watching? And would I enjoy sitting down and eating lunch with you? Right now, why those 3? I don't know. I think it's just because I want to know, is this somebody that I want to invest 10 hours of my day every day for the next 5 years? Like, is this somebody that has similar values in terms of how they care about other people, what kind of integrity they have when others aren't around? If there's somebody that puts me at ease and is easy to talk to and can build relationships, because that's what they're going to be doing with our clients. So I think the things that kind of rub me wrong and maybe indicate to me sometimes when those aren't going to be the case is when they're hyper focused on compensation or PTO use, or, one of the questions I tend to ask, again, anonymizing names, I'll ask, tell me about the worst manager that you ever had. And how they navigate that response kind of indicates to me like how much personal responsibility do they take in that relationship versus, how do they talk critically of others when that person isn't around or there to defend themselves? Or so I think those are the things that I would say worry me when I see them. And ultimately, like the questions I'm trying to answer that aren't interview questions. Are you a good person? Are you kind? Do you care about others? Do you do what's right when people aren't watching?
So you're saying, Miles, that you've had an interview where someone won the tic-tac-toe in all of those things?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I know for me, it's, I tend to deal with awkward situations with humor. Just make a joke. I mean, that's just how right or wrong, is how I am. I know when I've conducted some interviews where I think some of the things that rub me wrong is like when you start getting very, I would say like openly desperate on a call, like where they just say, "Hey, I'll do anything like for this job. I want to move on." Like I know you applied for the job, you know, and I understand that like it's important and all of that, but I think that at the same time it can create awkward situations where it's just like I'm not sure exactly what to say anymore besides like, oh yeah, you know, we'll give you a call or we'll call you back. And I think that you just want to be careful about that you're not coming across like you're trying to use guilt or shame to like move on to the next round, because I don't think that's a great tactic to use, is trying to like shame your interviewer and try to move on to the next round, which is not a high percentage of people, by the way. Most people don't do that, but to avoid that,
The suspense.
Hey,
He's
Brad,
actually-
out of curiosity, well,
I was gonna say, he's actually not frozen. He's just thinking deeply at the moment.
my big concern that I'm worried about is when is Brad's flight? Brad, when's your flight? Are you like going to take this on the plane? You know,
no, we're wrapping here in like, you know, 3 minutes. So I think the LaGuardia Airport Wi-Fi god has allowed me to come back this final last time, so we could wrap this call. But yeah, my flight it's not until like 4 o'clock, so I still have 2 more hours. I'm just going to work here.
Good.
But let's end on a positive note. Just real quick, 30 seconds. Give the people that are watching your best your hiring manager advice on how they can just move on to the next round. Like if you had to give them a top 3 bullet list, what are you looking for? Boom, boom, boom.
I can go first.
Sure.
Are you curious? Are you tenacious? And are you intelligent? I think those 3 things, if you have those 3 core characteristics, I can plug you into whatever the SaaS product is, or whatever the company is, or whatever the industry is, and you're going to do well. So my advice would be on your resume and in your interviews, find ways to illustrate that you have tenacity, that you're smart, that you're curious, and you should be just fine.
So you're saying, Miles, that if I showed up to an interview with you wearing this, it's automatically checking box 3 of intelligent?
100%.
Because everyone, that's exactly what I thought you said.
I would actually probably just give you my job. I'd be like, here, take my job. I'll report to you.
Go ahead,
I
AJ.
think 3 things very quickly. 1, are you empathetic? 2, are you organized? And 3, are you able to have fun? I think a lot of people need to understand that while it is a job, the job comes first, but you make it as much fun around you and your team. And then also for those that are going through searching for jobs, two pieces of advice. 1, take care of yourself because it's tough. You're not alone. And it's a numbers game. Apply, have a structure. Hey, I'm going to have 3 hours of applying, and then I'm going to go spend an hour and a half, you know, going for a walk or working out, and then come back to it, because it is a full-time job to finding new jobs. But, you know, as Tom Hanks has said, this too shall pass.
Like that drop.
Then I guess for my end, I'm looking for those soft skills, right? Are you conversational? How do you present? Like, how do you engage, right? Like, is your camera on? Are we making eye contact via the Zoom? And then, you know, are you actually trying to ask questions to understand, or are you just asking questions to ask questions, right? Like, I want to see that next level down. Oh, what's your NRR? Okay, well, 105%. Okay, well, that answers that question next. Like, no. Okay, what are you doing to drive NRR further? Like, how do you hope that this role will help increase NRR? What are you hoping that NRR is going to be after you get this role filled, right? Like, take that next layer down, because that shows me that you actually did your research, you cared enough to look it up, and you're actually taking time to think on the next level, because CSMs have to think outside the box. I'm not going to have the playbook built for you all the time. So if you're showing me you have that drive to build it for yourself, like, hell yeah, let's go.
Nice. All right, cool. We're at time. So, guys, where can people connect with you and learn more about you?
You can call me, beat me if you want to reach me on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. I think that's the best place.
All right. The Panda Head signing off from LaGuardia Airport with spotty and crappy Wi-Fi this call, but we soldiered on. But guys, thanks for coming on. It was fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks for having me.
All right. See you guys.
Cheers.
Bye. Yep. Bye.
Bye.